I feel like we've all heard the stories about rushing to the cloud because things are going to be easier. You don't have to manage all the gear. It's going to be done for you in the cloud. All these things are going to be handled. And we've already come full circle and realized that that is not going to be a good answer. I think most people understand the cloud is complex. It needs to be treated with just as much deference as any kind of on-prem gear. In fact, it's a relationship between all these, what is now multiple clouds that add additional complexity, but not so much complexity that it's not worth doing. There are a great many benefits to take advantage of, but what I have learned in my work with worldwide technology, especially in preparation for this particular episode, the addition of cloud marketplace represents a maturity of cloud itself. And the notion that there are many people that may not understand what it means to take advantage of the cloud marketplace, and what is that going to mean if I've got multiple vendors, and how does that work with money I'm spending directly with certain software providers or hardware manufacturers? Where's this mix, and how can I fully take advantage of it? Because we show up at cloud and we look around and we go, wait a minute, I'm getting bills that make no sense to me. I'm getting penalized for commits that should have been easy to hit. I don't know what happened. I have no idea what's going on with shadow IT. That still comes up. Sprawling, messes happening out there. But cloud marketplace and the ability to be more mature with becoming aware and then working your way up to better relationships with the people that you work with, including the clouds, can actually result in a very strong and positive bottom line. It's a result you want to take advantage of, and that's exactly what the paper we're focused on today is around: cloud marketplace maturity. There's good money involved, and it's just silly if we leave this stuff on the table. So even if you're familiar with cloud marketplace, even if you feel like you're good at this type of thing and you really got a handle on cloud and your spend and everything else, I challenge you to at least read this paper, but if not, attend the show. Stay tuned on this channel. We're going to talk about this, and I guarantee it'll blow your mind. There's going to be ideas that these guys give you that can make the net result much more positive for you, and it can be done quickly. It's nothing that you should fear. My name is Rob Boyd. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to WWT Research Reports. This is Cloud Marketplace Maturity. Let's get started. Well, guys, welcome. So glad to have you here. And as I've been preparing for this show, I have to admit that hopefully, like our audience, there's a lot of new information here I just wasn't aware of, and so I am looking forward to getting into these details. But first, just to make sure for anyone that's not familiar with who you are, Lauren, I'll start with you. Who are you? What do you do?
I am Lauren Fleming. I am a cloud resale business development manager here at WWT. Been in the channel for about 10 years, with the past 4 focused specifically on cloud.
Excellent. And Joshua, or Josh, as I'm probably going to call you throughout this, tell us what you do. And I think you guys work closely together as well, right?
Yes, we do. So Lauren actually rolls up to me. So Josh Bushman, I lead our cloud resell and marketplace practice. So that goes across all the hyperscalers, commercial, PubSec, global right now.
Now, my loose understanding, and this is where we're getting the details, is we had cloud. People go to the cloud and they go, this place is great. And as more and more services began being added, it was secondary for marketplace, which I'll have you define here, that came about. And that had to go through some adoption that I'm not sure how old it is. How long has marketplace been around? But Lauren, I'll start with you. Define marketplace, and if you can, just, in general, has it been something, does everybody know about marketplaces, or is this new to a lot of people in your experience?
I would say that marketplace is new to many customers. In the channel, the marketplace has been around for, Josh, help me here.
8+ years.
8,
okay.
Really.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And if you look at the reason behind it and its purpose, it is truly a procurement vehicle for thousands of ISVs. So whereas the typical procurement fashion is to work with a reseller or an ISV directly, you can go on to a marketplace, whether it's AWS, Microsoft, or Google, and have a license or service spun up same day if you need to. So it improves efficiency to market and to deployment, which is by far one of the biggest benefits of utilizing the marketplace.
The implication is that you're in the cloud or multiple clouds. There are these marketplaces that are ideal for procuring and understanding, just getting the most out of your investment, but they're complex in and of themselves. Every hyperscaler is going to have their own marketplace. So as many of us are in multiple clouds for various reasons, hopefully they're very strategic and tied to our business outcomes. But even if they aren't, the idea is that they have individual marketplaces. So there's a little bit of complexity with, being aware of your overlap and being able to negotiate maximum discounts with two organizations that may not care about each other. But marketplaces have stepped in, and you guys are here as kind of marketplace whisperers to help customers. You mentioned ISV, that's independent software vendor, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. And then there is worldwide technology along with others. What is important terminology to understand in terms of the components at play here?
You already talked about one of them there, right? The ISV, think of it as an OEM, right? So OEMs typically are more on the hardware side, but all of those typical OEMs are also ISVs, right? They're independent software vendors.
Okay.
When you say CSPs, you're going to think of cloud service provider, right? So when we say CP, that would be more of a channel partner or a consulting partner. So there's a lot of different terminology here, and there's no shortage of them out there. But when we say CP, think of a worldwide technology, right? We're a consulting partner or a channel partner. When you hear CSP, it's the same thing as you'll hear like hyperscaler. So think of Google, AWS, and Azure. And then you'll hear, not to give you more terms there, but CPPO is a channel partner private offer. That's how a consulting partner would help a client transact via the marketplace, and that's on AWS Marketplace. Azure has their own MPO, multi-party private offer, and then in Google you'll just hear private offer. So there's a lot of different acronyms and a lot to kind of digest.
Well, and to ask about that one, just to jump into that, private offer, no matter what is in front of it, I assume that is a negotiation that says, hey, here's something unique that you get in this interaction, and that probably requires something that's going to be higher up the maturity scale, since that's kind of our objective in the conversation and with the paper that this spawned this discussion. But is that correct? It's, especially someone's a babe in the woods or new to this, they haven't done much with marketplace. Private offers may not be something that they've looked at.
Originally, marketplace was, to me, create it more for smaller businesses, right? Because a lot of those businesses didn't have the access to these ISVs and these software products. And it was made for these small ISVs to actually get their products out there and be seen, right? We're all
Kinda
used
like
to
an app
Palo.
store? Is it similar to an app store
Exactly.
model?
I mean,
Okay.
we're used to Palo, we're used to Cisco, we're used to App Dynamics and CrowdStrike. Those are bigger companies. So those are seen, right? People know those names, but there's a lot of smaller ISVs out there that if they did not have the marketplace, they would never be seen. But with the marketplace, it was really designed. I mean, there's 2,000 plus ISVs on there. There's hundreds of thousands of products, right? So there's all kinds of things to navigate on it. But truly, the consulting partners were not brought into the marketplace until about 3 years ago. And AWS. So originally, it was more of a what you would call a private offer, was customer to ISV, and they would just transact it through the marketplace. Okay. And in what we would outside of marketplace call a direct, offer or direct transaction with an ISV. Well, our larger customers, so with worldwide, we play in the enterprise space. Our clients were coming back and saying, "Hey, AWS, we want worldwide involved in these transactions, right? Like they're our trusted consulting partner. We're doing a bake-off in their or a POC
ATC.
in their advanced technology
POC
center
in their ATC, yeah.
Yeah. So, they
I'll put
wanted
something on
us
screen.
involved in those. So that's
Yeah.
where the term CPPO came from. It was not originally in 8 years ago. It
Yeah.
just came out about 3, maybe, 4 years ago in the, late 2019, early 2020 or 2020. The customers asked for it. AWS gave it to them. Well, at that time, Google and Microsoft had, marketplaces, but they still could not allow consulting partners to be involved in the equation. So that's just now coming about on the other two. So AWS is really much more mature on that level of having consulting partners involved in it.
Are there competitive differentiation between them, like one that you go, this is easier to work with, or this one's a bear to work with? And because I look at them and they're overwhelming. There's a lot there.
There is, and I will say yes. I'm not going to name names, but some are easier to work with than others. Mostly due to what Josh was just saying about how mature they are. So
yeah,
I'll tell you, AWS tends to do it better just because they've been doing it in the channel the longest. They have figured out how do we work with the ISV, the customer, and the channel partner. It's kind of that three-legged stool to make this effective, and they've done it very well. Google and Microsoft are coming along great. They actually work directly with Josh to set up those programs, which is fantastic.
Oh, that's a nice
They're
compliment.
taking feedback, and they're growing very quickly to become one of the top rate marketplaces.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned they came about for helping smaller ISVs kind of get a foothold, and that makes sense because there is so much smart stuff coming from so many different places. But it also feels like, talked about AWS. AWS also sells its own services, so you procure and do various things directly through it. So and the big vendors are in here now. So the Cisco's and the Palo Altos are in there. Am I correct in saying all that?
Yeah, so I will say on the marketplace, there's actually, you're not procuring native AWS products on the marketplace. That would be more of a service catalog, right? So the marketplace is solely third-party software, SaaS products and licensing, and then also channel partner or consulting partner services.
I'm so glad you made that distinction. Okay.
You can do it through the same platform though, so
Yes.
you don't have to have separate logins, which makes it much easier to navigate for customers rather than going to, let's say, Amazon.com, which we all know, and then AWS.com for our services.
Okay. But what I'm also hearing you guys say is that the marketplaces themselves have been maturing, especially as of late, where the three are coming more into parity with each other. But they're also providing more tools that allow you to optimize your spend and your interaction with them, which I believe would be the one theme we have in this show. And the purpose of the maturity is to say, you're in cloud, but are you getting everything out of it that you should or could?
Yeah, you talked about sprawl earlier, and I think that ties very well into kind of that first phase of the maturity model. We have customers who are going all into cloud. So they decided, I want to take everything I have on-prem. I want my data centers completely virtual. And they went full on into the cloud, let's say 7-8 years ago. Well, now they have this enormous bill. They are not optimized whatsoever. And they're not maximizing their investment. They don't understand that they could be taking these ISV purchases that they are making anyway, putting that into their overall cloud commitment number and really maximizing that dollar that they're going to spend regardless. So it's a mixture. It's many things, but I would say that the biggest focus that these customers need to have just getting started is understanding their cost. Where are these costs coming from? Do I have reporting that shows that? And also understanding what the benefits are of making a commitment and choosing my ISV procurement processes the right way.
I would say a lot of customers, that, like you said, Lauren, they've got this third-party spend that they're spending no matter what, right? Even if it wasn't going through the marketplace, they still have that spend. So realizing that, number one, each marketplace has a different, threshold, right? Like AWS currently has a 25% cap on what can run through the marketplace and retire their cloud commit. And when I say retire their cloud commit, these companies go out and make a large cloud commitment or consumption commitment to AWS or Google or Microsoft, right? So, we see billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars commitment, and they're basing that solely on their consumption, meaning native products for that hyperscaler. And they're not taking into account, hey, I spend $70 million through Palo and Cisco and CrowdStrike, and they're spending that either way, and they don't take that into account where they could. So it could be up to 25% of their total cloud commitment could run through the marketplace. And that's money they're already spending anyways, so they should include that. Google is 50%. So it's even a greater value on Google, and Microsoft just opened theirs up, and they're at a no cap. So potentially you could go out and sign a massive consumption deal and get a very steep discount, and then run a huge portion of your third-party software spend through the marketplace to make up for the fact that you're really not truly at that consumption number.
We'll see
so
how
a lot
long
of these
they
companies,
let that last, though.
Yeah,
it's a teaser.
We'll see. Let's hope. Yeah.
Yep,
we've seen that happen.
And that's
as well.
part of the reason why they need consulting. A client needs a consulting partner because we're staying up to speed. AWS has changed their EDP rules, 2 different times over the past year and a half. Google has changed theirs once over the last year. So I mean, it truly, like you said, it can change, and it depends on, hey, we know that maybe AWS is going to open up to 50% in 6 months. Why don't we wait and you do a pay as you go and wait 6 months and then sign an EDP, right? Like it's just those small things that we're tracking and we're trying to consider when we're doing all this.
You guys are both kind of representing, by virtue of the questions that you're popping up and the additional color you're adding, this is what a consulting partner does with a given enterprise that is seeking to optimize how they interact with their cloud partners. Is that correct?
100%.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. And you also mentioned and at a basic level, making a commit, which might be something someone is in the cloud and hadn't done that yet, implies one, that they know everything that they're potentially doing with any individual hyperscaler. So I'm kind of curious, is that even, how knowable is that for a standard enterprise, whatever that may be? But you know what I'm saying? In other words, how much of that shadow IT or sprawl, because it's not ever been consolidated, how is someone figuring out what that is? And did the vendors help them with that, or do you? How does that work?
So the vendors have tools available that do look at overall cost and provide insights. But if you look at these vendors themselves, AWS, Microsoft, and Google, they don't want to be too good at optimizing your costs because that's bringing your spend down. So we are able to look at spend objectively, reporting from different scenarios and platforms, and put forth suggestions that actually make sense for a customer with more in-depth knowledge than you're ever really going to get from the hyperscalers themselves. And what's really important to understand before ever making a commitment is, are you even at the right baseline of spend? So let's say there's shadow IT going on all over the place. You think you're spending, I don't know, $1 million a year in AWS, but really your spend should be down to around $750K a year, because you could consolidate. You could be buying savings plans and RIs, reserved instances, those types of things, and you're just not taking advantage. So you might be committing to that $1 million number when you should really be committing to 750 or less. So that's something that's incredibly important for customers to think about before even considering a commitment.
And what's the risk of overcommitment? If I commit $1 million and I'm only doing 750, am I paying a penalty, or am I having to bridge that gap 100% or some percentage?
You're paying that $250K, out of pocket.
Oh, they're going to get at least $1 million from you.
And that's on any hyperscaler, exactly. Yeah. So that's why it's so important to, whether you're working with a partner or making sure you understand your spend internally yourself, it is important to have a very good hold on what am I spending, and is that even the right amount that I should be spending?
That's
and another part of that was
Yeah.
not even just the, somebody that already has $1 million spend, right? We're talking even somebody that's just getting in the cloud and they're going out and saying, oh, we're going to migrate all this stuff over, in the year one, and we're going to be at $1 million. You need that partner that can go in and say, hey, why are you migrating this? Does this need to even be in the cloud, or is this application run better on-prem, or what availability do you need for this application? Does it need to be available 24/7, or can there be instances where the data can sit there? So I mean, there's just so many different questions on it,
a lot of variables
when you're going through the process.
What would you cite as the important things that need to be built upon? What kind of components do you look for to say, yes, we are advancing in maturity, and these are the kind of things that we see in a mature organization?
There's so many different answers or questions that could be brought up there, right? I mean, the ideal maturity level when they get to level 5 would be, number one, they're aware of how much can run through the marketplace. They're aware of what their third-party spend is, right? Yeah. So that's a big one. We get with customers now that, they've been procuring things outside of the marketplace, and every different business unit has been going out and buying some Palo licensing, and then this one's buying Palo licensing, and then this one over here is buying Palo licensing. So they're not really aggregating that and getting the full discount they could get, and they don't have a good vision of what their software spend is. So I think once they start using the marketplace, that's all captured right in that portal, so they can go in and see, hey, we have Palo licensing, that's going to be due up in January of 2025. And it looks like we've got multiple business units doing that. Let's put this all together, right? So that you can consolidate that software spend. And it also gives you that single pane of glass for your software spend. We went through numbers with AWS. I want to say it was last year where they were saying that most customers only spend about 5% on the marketplace of their cloud commit. So that EDP term that we use, enterprise discount program, they're saying that most of their customers only spend 5% of that total number that goes through the marketplace. So we came in and said, hey, we're really finding that there's a lot of customers that have way more than 5% of a spend that could go through the marketplace. And we even did some account mapping with them where, some of our account managers had all that data on what third-party software spend our customers had. It was, in the energy sector, I'll leave the name out, but in the energy sector, we had about 90% of their IT spend went through worldwide. So we had all that data, and they were signing a EDP for $70 million a year, and we came in and said, hey, by the way, did you know you're spending $50 million a year in software spend? So now instead of committing to 70, you could commit to a much higher level and get a bigger tier of discount on that consumption. So once you get mature in your marketplace procurement, it gives you visibility into what your software spend is when those licenses end. And if you're really doing it good, you can get those down to, hey, we want everything to end in Q1, or Q4, whatever time frame they want. They can try to mirror that to where it's not every portion during the year, oh, what's ending this month or what's ending next month. So you can really bake that down to like, hey, let's make everything end in January. That way, we're all doing this at one time and saving, manpower and, maybe bargaining power.
And even setting the billing terms. So let's say you have a massive marketplace purchase that you want to make, but only 25% of your commit can burn down. If you set that term billing where you have 25 million this year, 25 next year, 25 the following year, you can actually maximize your burn down throughout the life of your term of the commitment.
Interesting. So it still all boils down to you're not going to be on your most powerful footing if you don't know what you're doing holistically. You're leaving money on the table if you don't know your spend. But it sounds like it's easy to understand why someone would be intimidated by even getting that together when you think of the on-prem spend plus one or more multiple clouds. Because even if you're organized in each of those areas, that's still at least 2 or 3 different dashboards at a minimum. And then there's probably other elements that I'm still leaving out. But that's really what it means to be mature, is to make sure you're not leaving money on the table and that you are not being surprised. But what it felt like as we get up to that higher one too, that there's some changes. Yes, the organization needs to be better at kind of coordinating their purchasing so that power is being funneled correctly. But what are the resources like within a customer that's good at doing this?
So as a center of excellence, I would say is massive, especially if you're looking at a large enterprise. So one thing I talk about a lot with our customers and our internal teams is governance, and having good governance policies across an organization. So if you have a very strong CCOE, but your developers don't communicate with them or follow the same rules as them, and they're making up 50% of the cloud spend, what's the purpose in having that CCOE or Cloud Center of Excellence, if I didn't mention that?
It almost becomes a cultural thing, a shift, because people,
Absolutely.
and boy, we know this too, especially with developers and engineers, they're not following just because we told them to.
Nope.
A lot of them, the best ones are mavericks, but yet we need to control those because we want to support them as best we can as well and pay for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you look at, even down to tagging strategies, which that's just tagging resources to make the data consumable, essentially. If 2 teams are using different tagging strategies, that data now is just not usable across the organization. So we're able to actually help set up those policies and make sure they're enforced, and help put a plan together for our customers to make them successful in how am I spending every single dollar that goes through the cloud. We want to help them achieve that.
And that's a reasonable expectation to have, is to be able to say at any given moment, you could you should be able to produce a report that says this is what we're spending and what our cost of that spend is to a certain extent, I guess, because that can vary. But that's not a foolish pipe dream. You're saying that's reasonable. It takes some work. It takes engagement with professionals like yourselves that can kind of help with the hand-holding necessary there to extract the data, execute on it properly.
Yeah, and I will say that it is much easier to establish clean governance when you're getting started in the cloud than it is once you have a massive footprint, because now you're needing to go back and make sure all these workloads are tagged that may be sprawling, 50 different accounts.
On the subject of governance is, we talk about that stage 5, right, where these companies that are actually really getting the marketplace and understanding it is, there's a private marketplace, right? That's where they can go in and they can have, different ISVs or products that have already been vetted out and passed through whatever those, approval process is, and they can have those in their own private marketplace. So a client can have their own private marketplace, have the tools in there that everyone in the company can see, yes, this NetApp product or this Cisco product has been, approved by whatever level needs to give the approval, but they can request those licenses. And then that way, you can't just go out to the marketplace and buy any product, right? You have to go through the private marketplace that your company's created. Same with the service catalog, where we talked about the native AWS products. They can create a service catalog, and you can basically use those IAM permissions where you're saying we're giving these users the ability to transact in X amount of dollars. Anything over that is going to take approval. So I mean, you really can control that governance, much better with a private marketplace and then in a service catalog and just procuring through the marketplace. But it does take buy-in. To Lauren's point, you have to have the buy-in, because otherwise you'll get that person, that developer that has a credit card that goes out to AWS Marketplace and buys something. And I can tell you, when they do that, they're paying list price. Yeah. So that means they're not getting any discount off of it. And that's why the private offers truly were brought about, is to, not be able to purchase it with the list price, but to actually get that discount that, you're working out with your ISV or a consulting partners helping work through.
You want to eliminate friction, because it's so easy for me to go procure a cloud service on my own. And if I'm just trying to get stuff done, I may not be worried about scale, long-term results, how I'm going to get this into production, whatever it may be. And so I'm just trying to get my job done at this moment. But that could be doing, because if there's a perception that there's going to be more friction going the corporate route. But it sounds like when you have these in place, it's not adding friction, it's actually centralizing. So, even if you get to the extent of these private offers, is that one place to go procure, and then in the background, it's going to AWS or Azure as necessary, or it's providing some level of guidance, not just simply the purchasing and procurement?
If they have a private marketplace and process already, and that product's there, or he can go and request that product, so it goes through the approval process. But at that point, it's everybody knows that that's being procured. Whereas if he goes out on the credit card and buys it, and then let's say he completes that project and he just forgets that it's there, or he gets fired, or he leaves for another company, and they're sitting there with a $5,000 a month bill that nobody knows about because he put it on the company credit card, and it's just kind of sitting off in space. I mean, that's how easily that can happen. So, when you get to that stage 5 of having that governance and that private marketplace and truly understanding your cloud spend, I think that's where everyone wants to be at.
The private marketplaces themselves are built on a specific hyperscaler, which is honestly a lot cleaner that way. We don't really want a path where it routes to different hyperscalers for various reasons. But if you've ever worked for a big organization, you know how difficult it can be to get a purchase authorized sometimes. So just think of the private marketplace as pre-approved purchases. So anyone can go get what they need, right?
I am familiar with that. There should be no friction in that when it operates correctly.
Yeah. And a lot of these hyperscalers have already done the background work of, they have standardized contracts. So they've, like AWS, for instance, has, different risk assessments that they've already done on these ISVs and these products. So they've already gone through part of that approval process. So a lot of times it can speed up that approval for the actual client because AWS has done some of the groundwork, or Google or Microsoft, obviously.
Do these systems provide any guidance on keeping you from purchasing something that's not appropriate for what you want to achieve or doesn't have the right foundation, or it's probably the extent of the governance that gets baked into it from the company side, I would assume.
They really don't have that in there, right? They do have some vendor insights that will talk about, where the vendor's at and a little bit about their product, but that really comes down to, I'll use the ATC again, right? You go in and prove it out in the ATC. I mean, that's where consulting partners are a good fit, where we can come in and do a bake off or a POC and bring a couple products in, let you see how they would actually work. And we even have connectivity into AWS and Google and Microsoft and Equinix. So we can run those, in the environment that you already have, and do that POC.
Is there such a thing as a customer who's too small to not get some kind of value out of the marketplace, or is this really something you'd recommend?
The benefits might differ a little bit depending on your organization size, but any customer can benefit from the marketplace, whether you're taking advantage of the efficiency to market or to deployment or burning down 25% of a multi-million-dollar EDP. You fall somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
So you can benefit.
Yeah, I mean, this comes into where we talked about why the marketplace was even created in the first place. It gives those, 3 and 4 person offices that Palo Alto or CrowdStrike normally would never go talk to sell to, because let's all be honest, they're going for more enterprise level or larger customers. So, that gives them the ability to go in and look at a Palo product and buy the same thing that, the large Fortune 100 companies are buying. So
does that include hardware too? Does hardware come into play with that kind of
there's no hardware through the marketplace. So it is all software or SaaS products and licensing and then services.
What does a procurement person in an organization think about this when they say AWS, which could be kind of scary?
This is when procurement comes into play, I think, and they can make it very efficient, and they can really pick up on, some of those promos that we talked about and some of those steeper discounts. So, anybody in procurement right now, I don't think they should be scared of the marketplace. I think they need to learn about it. And it really can be, it can streamline the process and really make them look good, to be honest, if they know how to work through it.
It seems like there's a major need for this. And it feels like part of the market that you guys are approaching is one that just says, hey, do you even know that you should be doing this? And then once that is overcome, then it becomes degrees of how do we do this more intelligently. And in the paper, it looks like it starts with education, which I'm always a big fan of. But then with that education, you begin putting in what are the simple steps that could be done to start really making sure that you're not leaving money on the table or wasting money, and go on from there. We encourage it was inherent at every level from 2 and above that you should be working with a consulting partner like Worldwide Technology. Obviously, that's what we prefer here. This is where the show comes from in the paper. There's a great assessment that we're going to link to at the bottom here for the show as well. If you want to take a much more active step rather than just reading, you could also go ahead and sign up for an engagement. Could either one of you speak to kind of what happens?
Yeah, what we do is, we'll come in and number one, we talked about that third-party software spend. So first off, we have to find out, do you even have a good idea of what your third-party software spend and what ISVs you have currently running, and whether it be on-prem or, in the cloud. So we help you gather that information. And then once you have that information, that's part of that is taking that and saying, you have X amount of spend and you're working on AWS or you're working on Google. Have you taken this spend and considered running it through the marketplace to then, get extra or steeper discounts on your cloud commit? So it really is just diving into your third-party software spend. And letting you know what's available, number one. So there's, like I said, there's thousands of ISVs and hundreds of thousands of products. So is that product even available through the marketplace is probably the first one. And then really diving into, hey, this ISV has a promo from, in Q3. Were you aware of that? So instead of purchasing it in Q3 or Q2 or Q4, if you run it through in Q3, they have this promo that you may get, 2% in AWS infrastructure credits, or you may get 1% in professional service credits from Google. So it's just really staying up to date on those promos, and then walking through their ISV, third-party ISV spend, and really diving into it and maximizing when and where and how they transact that.
Because that third-party spend, as you said, just to reiterate, that seems like one of the biggest things that you're seeing with your clients that say didn't know that could contribute And because that could add up to the bigger pile that we have at offer here, we should be taking better. We're a bigger company than we appeared to be at first, and now we deserve better discounts.
Yeah,
Something like
and
that.
we even,
Absolutely.
not just the fact that they could maybe, commit to a higher number, but we see cases where, they base it solely on their consumption number, right? And when they do that consumption number, let's say at the end of year 3, they haven't hit that consumption number for whatever reason. Maybe, a hardware didn't come in that they were banking on that was, part of a migration or whatever it may be, but they didn't hit that consumption number. And at that point, they could use the marketplace to make up for that, 25% that they may be down in it. Otherwise, they're cutting a check. I mean, we literally just did a software deal, and I'll leave out names, but we did a very large security software deal through the marketplace, actually the largest ever on AWS Marketplace, a CPPO, and the customer had not migrated any workloads over, very, very few, and they had signed about a $25 million cloud commit with AWS, and we're not going to hit it. So we had transacted. This was a renewal that we had, but we had the idea of, hey, why don't we run this through the marketplace? And at the time when they signed their EDP, there was a different, as I said before, these change all the time, right? There was different criteria. So at that time, it was a 50% of the total contract value for your marketplace transaction, but it could be, there was no cap on how much it could burn down. So we actually burned their entire $25 million commit down through this one purchase, essentially saving the customer, $25 million that they would have had to pay to AWS.
And on the flip side of that, if there's a commitment made, and we just saw this with another customer, they committed to, I think, $5 million a year. On month 1 of their EDP, they did a $2 million marketplace purchase that was not factored into their commitment number. So their commitment could have been $1.5 million higher, and they would have got a steeper discount. So we see it on both sides.
It feels like there's no end to what you guys could be doing, because there's got to be just a lot of confusion out there in terms of how do I make use of this? I got into the cloud, I looked around and realized I'm spending more money than I was before. I thought it wasn't supposed to be that way. I don't feel in control. You guys offer ability to be back in control and report right up to your business and go, we're doing the right thing by the business. I like that.
If you're just getting going, realize that involving a consulting partner or, talking to your whatever CSP you decide to go with, AWS, Google, Microsoft, talking to your customer advisor and really asking them the questions about marketplace, because if you're paying list price, you can definitely get a discount. So if you're just starting out, don't think that you just go and point and click. Get in there and get those private offers, whether it's through a consulting partner or not. Make sure you're utilizing those private offers to get a discount off a list price. And then on the flip side, if you think you are in that stage 5 and you've got a private marketplace, you have to stay up with that, right? You can't just say, hey, we got to stage 5 and we're good. You have to continue that. So now it's like, what promotions are going, what ISVs have promotions, what consulting partners have promotions, have the ISV or have the CSPs changed the amount that can cap off of your cloud commit. So there's a lot of different questions that you need to continuously ask, and have a consulting partners that are talking to the ISVs every day and talking to these CSPs every day or the hyperscalers every day. That is a benefit to have us in there to give you the latest and greatest.
Yeah. Well, Lauren, your final comments?
My everyday job is educating customers and jumping on calls and helping them navigate what do I need to do here? What do I need to understand? We have that knowledge, so you don't have to go do the research yourself. So just reach out. I love having conversations about it and educating everyone.
Josh, Lauren, thank you so much. I appreciate you both taking the time.
Thank you, Rob. It's been great.
Yep. Thanks, Rob. As always, appreciate it.
Well, all right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. There may be very few shows that we have done that had that much bottom line advice coming out within the show. If you read the paper that we that spawned this discussion, this notion of really taking the baby steps necessary that they've outlined in the paper around cloud marketplace maturity, which I explained earlier is really a function of maturity of the cloud. Now we talk about how do we optimize? How do we make sure that every bit of money that is being spent for our IT infrastructure, which may or may not include cloud, in a huge fashion, but is probably going to be some important element of that, especially as we're in this hybrid cloud environment. And the way it's laid out in this document and the way it works with experts like these is that you should not be leaving that money on the table. You need to optimize and make sure you're getting every bit that you deserve out of your relationship with any provider that you're working with. This paper is a great place to start, another good place to go. Cloud Marketplace Assessment is a step in formality in terms of just gathering a little bit more information, give you an idea of what kind of things could be done. It's really something that I'd just be surprised if anyone was hearing this and not taking advantage of it. I hope you do. Thank you so much for joining us here on WWT Reports Research as we talk about cloud marketplace maturity. My name is Rob Boyd. We'll see you on the next one.